Number 13.
So, sea monsters and angry mutinous pirates are both pretty scary. Do you know what's even worse?
Black blood.
A mysterious yet incredibly powerful substance capable of granting even the most ordinary of folk incredible power and magic. It's been a constant obstacle for our Tempest Edge rascals, so it only figures it'd worm its way into our top 15 sooner rather than later.
Sooner indeed. Our number 13 fight is Shiloh, Black Blooded Edition, versus Kotanai, Vishnu, Rilton, and Surai.
Shiloh Tact is the resident medic of the esteemed Heavens Federation's task force, a group of semi-dysfunctional but incredibly skilled combatants.
No, so Kyros, I guess.
Tasked with retrieving Kaya, this isn't the first time they've bumped into the Tempest Edge crew. Back in Chapter 2 was when they had their first run-in with our pirate protagonists, resulting in a pitched battle that ended in the death of 2 key crew members.
And a thoroughly devoured cake. Anyways, though they were foiled in their attempted kaya-napping, the battle nonetheless resulted in some devastating consequences. For the Tempest Edge, it was the deaths of their previous first mate and doctor.
Meanwhile, for the task force, their failure would result in something of a domino effect that would eventually result in them forcibly being infused with black blood, and robbed of their humanity as an unfortunate side effect.
With all this juicy drama, and with the task force's mission still firmly in place, it'd only figure that the two parties would cross paths once again.
And indeed they do. Our fated matchup takes place upon the island of Mortis Insula, otherwise known as the Island of Death.
Lovely name, very unique.
Having learned that the Tempest Edge has crashed upon the island, the task force has been sent to kick them while they're down, and make off with Kaya for real this time.
It bears mentioning that this is their first actual mission after being infused with black blood, so it's a chance for them to really test out their sweet new powers.
This mission sees the task force eventually splitting up. While 2 of them head towards the slave camp, the rest decide to slip on into the capital itself, in the hopes of sussing out Kaya's location. This team consists of Quinn Marshall, Kyros Kassin, and Shiloh herself.
Thanks to Kyros's Black Blood granted power, the ability to roll a nat 20 on any and all charisma checks, they managed to worm their way into Kalia, the capital of the isle, and earn an audience with Lord Zeus himself.
The ruler of Mortis Insula, a pompous jerk and a slaver as well. Real swell guy.
As they're busy probing the Fae for answers on the location of their quarry, however, a Tempest Edge-backed rebellion arrives in the capital, and things quickly go haywire. The task force are forced to throw off the act and fight for their lives, and amidst all this chaos, they eventually cross paths with several members of the Tempest Edge. Thus begins fight number 13.
Starting on page 54 of Chapter 6, the beginning of our fight sees Shiloh and Kyros stumbling across a fleeing Zeus during their flight through the palace.
Quinn, meanwhile, is nowhere to be found and off committing low-key treason.
At the same time as this, Leonardo and Kotanai both arrive on the scene. Accompanied by a turncoat Fae by the name of Surai, Zeus, quickly realizing just how utterly screwed he is, sicks his guards on both parties before running off to literally go cower under his bed.
Kyros, in a mood for a spot of regicide, gives chase, and Leonardo eventually follows out as well. This initially leaves Shiloh, Kotanai, and Surai to deal with a swarm of Ikalia guards.
I think it's one of the more interesting aspects of this fight. Being faced with a common foe, both the task force and Tempest Edge are forced to put aside their hostility for one another. It's a nice display of the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Anyways, eventually Team Tempest Edge finds themselves joined by both Rilton and Vishnu.
And around this time, the remaining guards, realizing that Zeus most definitely doesn't pay them enough for this kind of crap, wisely decide to turn tail.
With no more mooks standing in their way, Shiloh and Team Tempest Edge turn their eyes upon each other.
It is about to go down.
Before we go into the play-by-play, however, it's best that we finally get around to talking a bit more about Shiloh herself. Of all those infused with black blood, her personal transformation into an artificial celestial is truly remarkable, shifting her from an average combatant to a superpowered force of will.
Now an Ice Queen in more ways than one, she has the ability to manipulate the cold to a terrifying degree. She has also gained a pretty neat ice gauntlet too. Not only are the claws as sharp as razors, but the gauntlet itself is remarkably sturdy to boot.
As such, even outnumbered, she's an enormous threat to the Tempest Edge members.
Our fight starts with a bang, specifically with a dying Zeus using his power to let loose an anti-magic shockwave, ergo knocking all the magic users temporarily out of the fray.
With Relton and Surai having been weakened by the death throes of Zeus, it's up to Kotanai to take the initiative.
She lunges claw first toward Shiloh, who's only semi-weakened by Zeus's parting blast, and defends herself with her own ice claw in kind, all the while teasing her feline opponent with just how much she likes cats.
Saray soon manages to recover enough to provide covering fire, and Vishnu rejoins the fray as well, doubling the amount of cat references Shiloh can make.
Of course, even 3 against 1 isn't really enough to deter the task force's Ice Queen. In an effort to further even the odds, Kotanai decides to enjoy herself a little Mortis Insula delicacy.
This delicacy is known as mana sap, which, as its name suggests, is, well, tree sap that can massively boost a phase magical potential. Maybe that name wasn't exactly on point as I thought. Regardless, for a bestial, however, the effects can be
A bit more terrifying.
Like going completely insane terrifying. Fortunately, thanks to previous experience, Kotanai knows better than to overindulge, and only samples a small bit of the sap. Enough to give her a bit of a boost, but not enough to make it go completely bonkers.
Between a souped-up Koteni, a pissed-off Vishnu, and a super-strength archer, they bombard Shiloh with attacks from every direction. However, the Ice Queen simply defends herself by coating herself with frozen armor or creating massive walls of ice to keep her opponents off balance.
How do the pirates respond to this ultimate defense? With more numbers. Relton, using some illusion magic, triples the number of, well, himself, to rejoin the fight.
The onslaught now finally overwhelming Shiloh's defenses. Kotanai gets her claws to break through the ice armor and dig deep into her skin, holding the artificial celestial down. Meanwhile, Vishnu breaks down the last of the ice walls, and Sarai loads her bow for one more shot.
Relton prepares a final burst of magic, ready to melt Shiloh entirely. In a display that'd make even the sun itself blush, he gathers as much magic as he can to supercharge a massive ball of pure solar power.
Boasting enough power to melt an entire military vessel, such a blast should be more than enough to eradicate even the fiercest ice queens. Relton releases his spirit bomb, Twilight Explosion, sending it hurtling towards Shiloh.
Vishnu grabs Kotanai to pull her out of the way of the blast, only for Kotanai to do the same thing for Shiloh as well, I guess. Having felt a dose of sympathy for the woman, she has decided to save her life. She still knocks her out, but I mean, hey, better than being outright disintegrated.
Thus, the battle ends in our hero's victory.
Now, I think all three of us can agree the fact that probably one of the biggest pros of this fight is the sheer display of power from all parties involved.
Right. You've got Shiloh probably giving us one of the best examples of the sheer potential of the artificial celestial project. This probably is really the first time that we've gotten the chance to see the terrifying power that the black blood can give someone.
I mean, she went from being thrown about by a bear to becoming a massive beast herself.
Of course, her opponents don't come up short either. Kotanai's usage of the sap is a brilliant display of her personality, and it's also a nice little callback to a previous scene in Chapter 2.
Not to mention, Vishnu really gets to show off just how incredibly strong he is, what with crashing through Shiloh's ice all Kool-Aid Man style. But maybe the biggest surprise is our resident light mage.
The clone magic alone was honestly pretty dang neat, but what really drew me in was his final attack. The build-up was absolutely fantastic, and really helped sell the sheer devastation of the attack.
Speaking of devastation, though, there are parts of this fight that aren't really all that pretty.
The writing is a bit hard to follow at points. An unavoidable side effect of when you have one role player having to balance responding to 3 other train of thoughts.
Though the biggest fault is how this fight kind of just fizzles out. We see so many grandiose plays, and then it just kind of ends with a saving throw and a knockout via taser gauntlet.
Probably just the role player saving a more decisive ending for the inevitable rematch. I mean, with all the Shiloh Kotanai tension, you know that crack ship will find a way to sail again.
However, the best thing this fight does is character motivation. The talk between Kotanai and Shiloh through this fight showcases these characters aren't really fighting each other, but that they're fighting for their respective families.
Kotanai to protect Kaya and her crew, and Shiloh desperate for success, so the Federation will help her find her missing son. These clashing motivations make both parties incredibly sympathetic.
Considering these elements, I think all 3 of us feel like this fight richly deserves its spot on our top 15.
Exactly. This fight was just that cool. Seriously? Volt ends every video with a pun, but when I do it, I'm just like, never mind. Yes, fight's over.